On the dividing range, the face of a young warrior stares up at the sky. His descendants see the proud profile silhouetted against the setting sun, and in their hearts they know that while he remains there, a carved figure in the changeless hills, they will have peace and will be unafraid of their enemies. It is no handiwork of man, this sharp-edged profile. The hand of nature has set it there for all men to see, and to remind the people of the valley that it is to Buddha that they owe their freedom. Cut off in the full strength of manhood, he left no children to remember him and carry on the divine spark of courage and sacrifice to succeeding generations. But there is no need for these while his face can be seen in the dividing hills. This is the story of how the face of Buddha has been carved into the timeless hills. A fighting man from another tribe had made several raids on Buddha's people, traversing the pass in the early morning, killing defenseless men and capturing the most desirable women. The raids were made stealthily, and no one had seen him until one morning when he stood on a rock high above the camp and shouted insults and threats. "Choose the best of your weakling warriors," he called, "and I will cut him into little pieces. Or if you are afraid, come and attack me in force, and you will learn the strength of a real fighting man. Already I have taken many of your wives and young women. Soon no one will be left except old men and women and babies crying for their mothers' breasts." Goaded by his words, some of the younger men of the tribe hurled themselves up the steep slope. But when they arrived breathless at the rock, the fighting man was no longer there. The elders sat in conference round the campfire that night. "This is a task for young men," they said. "We must accept the challenge, or our people will never live in peace. We dare not fail." They called the young men to them. "The honor of our tribe is in your hands," they were told. "Who will accept the challenge?" The young men stepped forward eagerly, and a chorus of voices answered, "I will! I will!" "That is good," an old man grunted. "At least we do not breed cowards. But bravery is not enough. Only one man can be chosen, and we must be sure that he is the most skillful fighter among you. Go to your gunyas now and sleep with your wives. Sleep well, and in the morning we will choose the one who will serve us all." The following morning the eager young warriors danced with excitement. Individual contests were fought, and many a proud young man shed his blood on the grass as he failed to fend off the spear of his opponent. There were sore heads and broken legs and arms, but when the sun was high there was no doubt who was the most worthy warrior. It was Buddha, who had passed the boar rite so recently that he had not even selected a wife. The next day, before the sun had touched the peaks of the dividing range, he was on his way. He held the sharp-tipped spears and the polished waddy in his left hand, while a light wooden shield with brightly painted designs rested comfortably on his right arm. He ran nimbly between the trees and was lost to sight in the folds of the hills. When he reached the flat rock where the fighting man had shouted his challenge, the sunlight gilded his body. Standing erect, he heard the distant, deep-throated roar of the men of his tribe. Another sound made him turn his head quickly. It was the fighting man of the opposite tribe. He was older than Buddha, his body scarred with ancient wounds, his hair shaggy, the muscles rippling like snakes under his skin. The men stood facing each other, like a huge gnarled tree and a young slender sapling, growing side by side. "Come, my little man," the fighting man sneered, showing his teeth in a grin and shaking his hair out of his eyes. "Are you the best that your people can provide? I expected to find a warrior worthy of my spear this morning." "Boasting words do not bring victory," Buddha said with a quick smile, dancing lightly from one foot to the other. "The choice fell to me. From this morning's work we will prove which tribe will dominate this place." He sprang to one side as the older man lunged at him with his war spear. The contest will never be forgotten while the campfires still burn at night in the valley. The tribesmen came closer to cheer on their young champion, and the fighting men's tribemen too crept out of their hiding places among the trees and the rocks. Time after time Buddha was wounded by spear and club, for his rival was heavier and more experienced. But his feet still danced as lightly as a bird, and every now and again he penetrated his opponent's guard until the older man was bleeding in a dozen places. The fighting man was breathing heavily, and for a moment he lowered his shield. Buja dropped his spears, seized his wadi in both hands, and brought it down on his head with a shattering blow. For a moment there was silence. It was as though the birds had stopped singing, and the wind had died among the trees. A roar of triumph came from Buja's people. They swarmed over the rock, leaping over the dead body of the fallen fighter, and surrounded their champion. Buja laughed and threw his arms wide, as though to scatter the enemy tribesmen who were stealing away to the shelter of the trees. With a smile still on his face, he swayed and fell, and when they bent over him, they found that their young champion was dead. It was only his spirit that had maintained the life in his body until the supreme moment when his club descended on the fighting man's head, and his people were assured of a victory. And so he was buried, in honor and in sorrow, the young man who sacrificed his life and the children he had yet to father to save his people. No one knows where his bones are buried. There is no need to know, not while his face continues to smile as he lies on his back on the summit of the dividing range and shows a proud profile against the blue sky. He remains there, in the clear cold air, a god of the mountain heights, whose memory is enshrined in the hearts of his people.